In my opinion, the most important thing for theory crafters to keep in mind when analyzing this Taylor Swift is the fact that she is an unreliable narrator, and she brings our attention to that fact numerous times. And I think one of the reasons that people have such a hard time accepting this is the fact that a lot of people want to believe that they know everything, whether it be because they feel like they've developed this intense relationship with Taylor throughout her career, or whether they're just trying to prove that they are the best fan and know the story the best. A lot of people are really attached to this notion that Taylor is telling us the truth, even though basically every album that she has properly owned, she has given us hints, very big hints, that she is not entirely truthful. In this video, I'm going to discuss some of the many times that Taylor has either admitted outright, especially in her lyrics, or has alluded to the fact that she is not being 100% truthful with what she's telling her audience. I'm also going to discuss some of the reasons why I believe this is, and some of the reasons that it makes her art better as a result. So first off, what is an unreliable narrator? And I like this definition from JerichoWriters.com, so I'm going to borrow it for this. What does an unreliable narrator mean? An unreliable narrator can be defined as any narrator who misleads readers either deliberately or unwittingly. Many are unreliable through circumstances, character flaws, or psychological difficulties. In some cases, a narrator withholds key information from readers, or they may deliberately lie or misdirect. I also want to go into their explanation for what is the effect of an unreliable narrator. The unreliable narrator in literature, if written well, will cause the reader to experience the delight of a shocking twist or dawning realization that they may have been misled. When readers have been told a story from a specific point of view, we cannot help but side with the storyteller even when they are doing dubious things or making bad decisions. This can make for complex and conflicted feelings when readers realize they have been double-crossed by someone they trusted. And one of the things that I often say when discussing Taylor's work is that she frequently has to leave us clues, because if there is not foreshadowing that lies have occurred, that the narrator is unreliable, it can make the reader really mad. And I think the reason that we really need to focus on things from a reader perspective is that one of the things that Taylor has said a number of times over the years is that she really does want her fans to read the lyrics. I think this is one of the big reasons that with TTPD there was this push that she is a poet, this is poetry, read the lyrics, like actually read this as art instead of just treating as literal retellings of my romantic life. Jericho Writers said, if readers feel that they have been outright lied to with no possible way to sniff out the truth, though, the effect can be negative. For this reason, it's essential to balance the mistruths with some careful foreshadowing and stitching in of clues, so that when readers look back and think about the story after the reveal, they feel satisfied and impressed rather than frustrated. This is so key to processing so many things in Taylor's art. And a lot of people get really stressed when they're like, well, if she's an unreliable narrator, if we don't necessarily know what things are true, if we don't necessarily know what context things exist in, because she frequently changes the context of events and of symbols within her work, then like, how can we know anything's real? And we can't. That's part of the fun. Like, once you detach yourself from this notion that it all has to be real, it gets so much more interesting on such a deeper level, and you can do so much more nuanced things with the interpretations of the work. And I don't necessarily know that most of these are like entire lies. I just think that there are a lot of times that something that maybe happened in a business context, she has used a relationship as a metaphor. A lot of things with her relationship with fandom, her relationship with fame, her relationship with the industry, she has kind of used a metaphor of like being in relationships with people that are very hazardous to your health. I think it's very interesting how she does that, and you cannot even begin to take that in if you're taking these things as 100% literal. Hi, my name is AerinMoriarty. I really like talking about Taylor Swift, pop culture, popular media, and things of that nature, a lot of things that influence us. As someone with a tremendous interest in showbiz over the years, I like comparing a lot of things that Taylor Swift and other modern artists are doing to things that artists in the past have done. I like perceiving things from a more media literate lens, criticizing the information that we receive from the media because it's very heavily controlled by billionaires at this point. If any of that interests you, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I am a small content creator, and it really does help me out a lot. So why would Taylor specifically be motivated to lie? Well, one of the biggest reasons, obviously, is the fact that the industry is really hard. The media is really hard on female artists, especially ones that start out early, especially ones that make money and get power. And there is an attempt to try and control and corral that power so that they can keep her making profit in the way that they want her to make profit instead of doing things that are more beneficial for herself. You know, so much of what Taylor has been doing recently, now that she owns her masters, is advocating for other artists to own their masters. The industry, for the majority of the time it has existed, has not let artists have a tremendous amount of control, a tremendous amount of benefit from their art. The people primarily benefiting in those type of regards was the people that were managing them, the companies that were managing them. Like nowadays, even if an album sells millions and millions in copies, that's not guaranteed to make any money for artists. That's why so many artists stay permanently on tour. Tour is often one of the only ways that the artists directly make any significant point. And Taylor and a lot of these other artists, now that they have money and power and don't necessarily need the system as much, which I think is why she's rolled out this album the way she is, to demonstrate how much she doesn't need the system anymore. She can sell tons of copies of an album without engaging with any normal type of media. She just has to hint at some things like being on a podcast with her boyfriend. When you actually take a look at Taylor's lyrics and when you actually process them and when you actually research the evidence and things of that nature, the story becomes incredibly sad. I think about the beginning of the TTPD set being added to Eras Tour and the way a lot of us were like, holy crap, like that's awful. Like she's beaten down to nothing and then she, you know, unalives on stage, she's laying there and then they primp her back up and they pose her back up and put her makeup on and kick her out there and perform, and I can do it with a broken heart. And I think so many people, when they're looking at this at relationships wise, they're like, oh, she did the Eras Tour when she had a broken heart from breaking up with Joe. But there have been any number of other heartbreaks in her life, especially related to the industry and the way the industry has tried to control her, to the media and the way the media has harassed her. The media knows that her name gets clicks. The media says any number of things about her of questionable legitimacy, and people just accept that unquestioningly, even though Taylor has said a number of times that the media does these things. Taylor has very frequently in her life been put in a position where it is not in her benefit, either safety-wise or financial-wise or fandom-wise, to tell the truth, especially being saddled very young with this very wholesome, very flawless image of perfection, which we're going to discuss perfection in a minute. It is one of the biggest cages you can trap a woman in. In general, no one is faultlessly perfect 100% of the time, especially in a very cutthroat competitive industry like the music industry. But at the same time, they have sold her on this image of being holier than thou, of being some Mother Teresa level figure. And I don't think that she's behind the scenes as bad as Mother Teresa, but I do think that the media is just chomping at the bit to overanalyze and exploit everything that she's ever done negative in her life, whether it be 5 minutes ago or 15 years ago, in order to get headlines, get clicks, get people angry, get people engaged. And at the same time, a lot of the traditional interviews that she has tried to participate in, when she was trying to explain her art, she was trying to talk about folklore in this capacity of her being a storyteller and her making parables. And yes, these are fictional characters, but they are distilled from events in her real life. So very few news outlets actually take her work seriously for what she's trying to make it. And the benefit of going on the New Heights podcast, which is a concept that I've been going on in my New Heights video, and also I'm going to do some more streams about it, I've done a couple streams already, is the fact that having New Heights as a platform to launch her next album gave her so much control over not only how she was able to pitch her album, but also how people received a lot of things about her album. But it also, swirling back to the topic of this video, goes into her telling lies. And I think part of this whole campaign of what she's doing right now is making the lies more and more apparent, so people will divorce themselves from this notion that she always tells the truth. Perspective, memory, and truth. Even if Taylor was 100% trying to tell the truth all of the time, it would still be a narrative that she was telling us as a story, because we are incredibly biased about the way we perceive things. It's like all of those sayings about there being, you know, two perspectives in the truth and those things all being different. People don't try to be that way. It's just memory is a very fallible thing. When you participate in diaristic writing, you are always going to be biased by your own intentions, by your own belief that you are doing things, you know, of the best will, of the best place of intentions, but the people around you may not necessarily be. There are a lot of ways that we perceive things that may not necessarily be beneficial to truthiness. I also want to talk about forced perfection. Like, forced perfection is a cage, 100%. One of the worst reputations you can have is having a faultless reputation, because then people are waiting for this moment of your downfall, because no one is perfect. There is always going to be something that you do that is wrong that people are going to twist into like something that should become your downfall. And like, we just have this perpetuated fakeness both in media and in culture, where everyone pretends that a lot of other people aren't making mistakes. And when we're talking about somebody who did something wrong on the internet once, we act as though we've never done anything wrong ourselves, when, like, you know, I hate to bring the Bible up in times like this, but, you know, glass houses, casting first stones, so many things apply. Let's also talk about red herrings super quick, because Taylor has alluded to the fact that she uses red herrings a number of times, especially around the time of like the TTPD release. According to Wikipedia, a red herring is something that misleads or distracts from a relevant or important question. It may either be a logical fallacy or a literary device. One of the ways that Taylor does this is the kind of like look over here thing that she does with little tidbits that she drops in that are supposedly little tidbits of gossip about her previous exes that she knows people are going to be interested in. And then those tidbits of gossip very often happen in the songs that have the messages that she wants people to read the most, whereas the songs where she goes into things that are probably more like her flaws and how she mishandled things, they don't necessarily get the same juicy tidbits in all cases. I don't want to dive too far down in that, because that could be an entire video of its own. Let's go into lyrics. So lyrics are her communicating with us. One of the ways that she has stressed this is by telling us to read the lyrics. One of the reasons she has stressed this is in the song Dear Reader. Just because she says something in a song once doesn't mean that that is the only time or place that she's doing it. A segment of my other video got corrupt, so I'm gonna look different for a couple seconds, but I'm sure you'll be fine. Anytime that she tells us, her audience, her readers, her actions, her intentions, that is to convey information to us. And it's not just about that song, it is to convey that that could be happening in other places as well. If she wastes time in song lyrics where you only get a certain number of lyrics before a song doesn't sound good anymore, she's going to do it for a reason, and I'm going to assume that she's using it in more than one place. If she says every bait and switch was a work of art, which is something that she has said, it is not just something that relates to something that's taking place in that song or the structure of the song itself, the events of the song itself. It is the fact that she is boasting to us about the fact that yes, every bait and switch was a work of art. Then for a more recent reference, I can show you Lies. It is especially important that this is coming in a song that is about how she performs for her audience despite what is going on in her personal life. Like, there are so many fans that believe that I Can Show You Lives it's just something that applies to the Eras Tour or maybe Rep Tour or something of that nature, but I think it's the duration of her career. I think a lot of people perceive things as being one-time events when in reality what she's trying to communicate is the fact that these are patterns that happened again and again and again in her life, and one of those patterns was her being necessitated to show us lies. In the song I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, that A, she knew that she was going to perform every night in the Eras Tour after it was added to the set list, and B, she knew it was a song that a lot of us were going to use as mantras to get through the crappy things that are going on in our lives right now. And because of this, literally over and over and over again, fans have had I Can Show You Lies, I Can Show You Lies. And this is a song that also has a lot of tidbits about this so-called relationship, finding crucial pieces of evidence and him avoiding her, so fans get talking about who ghosted Taylor and what were these crucial pieces of evidence, and very often ignoring the whole point of the song, which is that very many times in her career she has been performing when she had a broken heart. Not necessarily from relationships, but also from the challenges of the industry and from the struggles that her parents have had with their health, especially her mother having cancer. Like, we want to act like this was just Eras Tour and Joe's breakup, because I think it makes us feel better about the fact that there have been any number of really terrible things that have happened in Taylor's life that she has had to endure and smile and perform through. So obviously with this lyric coming out in TTPD, it's one of those things where she's been hinting at it for a while, but this is like the, hey, yes, you know, that thing that I've been hinting at for a while, I'm going to say it now, and people are still going to ignore it. Another recent reference, and so I changed your name and any real defining clues, and one day your kid comes home singing a song that only us two is going to know is about you. She doesn't need to boast to the person that, like, this is describing that this is what she's doing, because that person is going to know. The reason that this is in the lyrics is so we know that this is something that she does. So we know to look into things more deeply. So we know, hey, even if 100% of these details don't match, if 90% of the details match, it's a possibility that the other 10% was changed to protect the identity of the guilty. The only reason to put those lyrics in the song is to communicate to her fans that she is doing that. I suspect that a great number of times she has flubbed the details such that her fans thought, like, there are so many things that fans think are incredibly obvious clues, like Style being about Harry Styles, and Thank You Amy being about Kim Kardashian, and the song Blue Dress on a Boat. Like, people are looking at these very obvious signs and being like, oh, that's so obvious, but Taylor has said for years that she wouldn't make things that obvious either, and I think that she has been, ever since Reputation, pointing us to the fact, like, hey, more hints, every bait and switch was a work of art, maybe they'll get it, oh no, they didn't, I can show you lies, and so I changed the real defining clues, okay, you guys see it now? No, you're still taking everything to be literally about the most obvious thing. Then there's what I call the secret third person, which I don't think necessarily a lot of people looked into this as an instruction for how to interpret her songs or a message to the fans, but I absolutely think it was, and that is the lyric from Getaway Car, but with Three of Us, Honey, it's a sideshow. It is a sideshow, it is something to be watched, people pay money to come, it is a spectacle that is made of it, and Three of Us, a hint to the fact that many of her songs have like a me and I and him and he, but then they also have a you. And like, sure, there's a couple of scenarios where that would work, like I was telling him I love you, like sure, that's going to be the same person because that's in quotations. And Taylor is usually really good at putting her songs in quotations when she needs to have quotations there for a specific point. But the thing is, if those words are outside of quotations, if it says he one place in the song and it says you another place in the song, you cannot equate those two to the same thing. Now, I do think that sometimes she's not actually talking about a he, a him, and a you, and she's actually talking about Taylor Swift, the brand, Taylor Swift, the inner person, Taylor Swift, the showgirl, Taylor Swift, the poet, like things in that way. But from a trying to interpret how this relates to a muse perspective, you cannot use the clues from he and then also use the things for you and have them be the same person. You cannot apply all of Ready for It, which is a song that I'm probably going to do an entire video of because I think it's a really good introduction to interpreting her songs in this level kind of thing. All of those, thought he was a killer, first time that I saw him, blah, 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 younger than my exes, but he looks such like a man. Like, you cannot take those lines and also say, in the middle of the night in my dreams, you should see the things we do, baby. But I'm probably going to do a whole video on Ready for It. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. It is important that in Reputation, there is also one of the things that everybody overlooks, the Reputation prologue, where she says that people are going to try and paternity test this album and they're not going to be successful. And the only way that that could possibly be true is if it's not about a man or men. I don't think that Taylor would drop that about the boyfriend that people already kind of suspected she had. Like, people were already gossiping about the fact that she was probably with Joe Alwyn when the album dropped. It makes no sense for her to make that, oh, people are going to try to paternity test, but they're never going to realize it's the boyfriend that I'm going to step out with. No, that makes no sense. Other good examples are Down Bad, F It If I Can't Have Him versus Did You Take All My Clothes? Style, You Got That Long Hair, Slick Back White T-Shirt versus He Can't Keep His Wild Eyes on the Road. So Long London, Pulled Him in tighter each time he slipped away versus How Much Sad Did You Think I Had in Me? I Didn't Opt In to Be Your Odd Man Out. Ivy, I'd Meet You Where the Spirit Meets the Bones. He's in the Room, Your Opal Eyes Are All I Wish to See. But also more broadly, there's the performance art aspect of it. When you have a performer that is not just performing on stage, that is controlling when we see her and how we see her and what she's wearing in those pictures, and very often there's a lot of Easter eggs, and those Easter eggs are adding up to things in the work that she is doing. That is all part of her art, that is all part of her work, and it needs to be perceived more as that. And I haven't even brought into discussion things like who else trolls you and who else decodes you and all of these other like words about coding and also words about braiding stories together, especially in TTPD there were a particularly large amount of hints to all of the machinations that she was doing behind the scenes, all of the other things that were going on in her songs that a lot of people couldn't and wouldn't accept. Because the problem is, if you cannot fundamentally get past the first barrier of Taylor Swift would never lie to me, you cannot take these songs very far at all, because what Taylor has said about them explicitly is very limited. A lot of it is subtext and deeper analytical reading and questioning, is the thing that she says this song about actually what this song is about? Now, different theorists have different thoughts about what performance Artlor is, when Taylor started doing it, what the ultimate goals are, but like for me personally, I believe that during the Reputation era, when her social media got really locked down, when we were only seeing her when she was in like outfits that were curated, we stopped seeing her in her workout clothes. Like, I think younger and newer fans don't necessarily see things the same way that I do, because being an adult through all of Taylor's career, I very distinctly remember how she was portrayed, like everything in her early career versus how things were when she came back after Reputation. And because she had that big long gap, because so many of her fans are newer, or so many of her fans didn't pay nearly as much attention until very recently, I think a lot of people don't recognize the fact that this is really clearly curated appearances and performances and outfits, and all designed to tell a specific tale. And so much of the story that Taylor seems to be trying to tell is about the industry, not just the recording industry, but also show business as a whole. This concept of just like how many women throughout the course of media history have been harmed by the media, have been forced to put on a performance, have been forced to put on a persona for the industry. People can look at Lady Gaga and understand that she's not the person underneath, that there is a performance that is being put on. People can look at Chappell Roan, can understand that that's not the person underneath. Well, people can't necessarily always understand that with those performers, but like, just because the performance that Taylor puts on is under the name Taylor Swift doesn't mean that it's not a performance. And the more you realize that this is a performance that is going on, that she is putting on, the more you will appreciate her art, her work, the more you'll value it, the more benefit you'll get from it. Like, so much of what she's doing is referencing all of this old media, so we will look up all of these old people, so we will see like just I have read a lot of autobiographies about people that Taylor seems to reference a lot, and there are so many similarities. Getting in the industry very young, being kind of perceived as this it girl, or this, like, you know, the best girl or the most interesting girl for a very short period in time in her youth. The way that these women had had to struggle to recover from that, to actually be able to have a career as an adult. Not all of these actresses were able to do that. Not all of these singers were able to do that. So many people that she references had incredibly like bad either substance problems or mental health problems because of the impact of the industry. So many of these people were put through absolutely egregious things when they were children. And I think especially with Showgirl, that there's this big connection that she's trying to make between all of these things, all of these people, all of this history, because I think that now that she owns her work and she has the financial benefit from it 100% and control of her legacy in that way, I believe she's trying to do her best to correct it, to make it not as damaging as it's been for all of these years, for all of these people. And I think that's really incredibly important. And I think the more that you perceive her work from that light, the more that you'll realize that she is trying to do so much with the power that she's gotten over the years. I think that she kind of walks a middle of the road line so that she can get a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds interested in her, and not just her, but the other artists around her, a lot of artists who are a lot more vocal about things. A lot of the people around Taylor speak out very clearly around times when Taylor draws attention to them, and I think that's all very interesting. And like, if you're not paying attention to things on that level, then I can understand people not thinking that she's doing anything. But when Taylor makes it very obvious that she's helping, people just say she's not doing enough. The media really likes to put her in no-win situations, and because of this, she has been very discreet about how she communicates a lot of things, and one of the ways is in her lyrics. But this video has already gotten on way too long. This was supposed to be a lot shorter, so... Okay, it's probably going to be under a half an hour. That's good at least. Hi, I have been AerinMoriarty. In addition to talking about pop media, pop culture, things of that nature, and Taylor Swift a lot, I am a late-in-life lesbian who talks about how that has impacted my life. I also talk about my previous career in IT security, how EDS and ADHD impact my life, many things of that nature. So if that interests you, please be sure to give me a like, a comment, or a subscription. Because like I said earlier, I am a small creator and that really helps me out a ton. Thank you so very much. Bye-bye.